Let's start with this question. In a world where there are more cloud environments that we can count, how can I effectively manage, administrate, and secure all of my cloud environments? If you stay at the end, I will answer your question. Well, my name is Carlos Solís Salazar. I am one of the leaders of Comunidad Toyo in Panama. I have several certifications, some fundamentals, some associate, and some expert certification in Microsoft. Besides, I have NCT, Microsoft Certified Trainer, and Terraform associated. Also, I have a few recognition from Microsoft community, and recently I received the Microsoft MVP in Azure specifically. Why I prefer my name is Carlos Solís Salazar because Carlos Solís on internet is a character of a TV show from years back ago. So I am not this one. Please look look for me at as Carlos Solís Salazar. Well, today we are going to talk about Azure Arc and how we can use it. But our agenda will be first why use Azure Arc. Other is what is Azure Arc. Also management and security benefit of using Azure Arc. When to use Azure Arc. And at the end, I would like to make you a demonstration and finishing with some final thoughts. So first was on the premise data center. That's live where we have all on premise and we administrate everything in the back room. Then appears the public cloud, but in that moment start like a pseudo war where you see a lot of people saying the cloud is better, other people say on premise is better, and there is a common fight between these two scenarios. So if on-premise is cost and the cloud is cheaper, or the backup and recovery is better, and the backup in the recovery on-premise it is not so easy. We have a lot of maintenance. So we start, or a lot of people is starting asking the question, what should I use, cloud or on-premise? Well, it is not just one or other. It's better if we have the best of both work in our environment and use hybrid cloud. That is mean use some on-premise solution and other um, cloud solution. There are some several scenarios of hybrid cloud uh, benefits. So, or hybrid cloud scenario, sorry. Um, One is when you can use a hybrid cloud when you have dynamic or frequently uh, workload changing. You need some resource. The cloud will help you in that part, deploying some resource fast. In on-premise, you require more time. So if you need some resource for testing or for a season, I don't know, by Black Friday or other season, well, it's preferred to have some resource on the cloud and deploy it. When you need big data processing, is really complicated when you have a lot of data in your on-premise environment and try to use it from the on-premise and process all the data on-premise. Usually we don't have that kind of power in our environment. So it is prefer use a mix when where I have my data on-premise and use it online. Also, moving to clouds is additional to the user because we need the user need their own space, so we can move some resource to the cloud to allow the user have their own space. In a moment like a season requirement, we need a process for a short term. We need a process capacity to upload or have more process capacity. So in that scenario, it's better have a cloud provider to help us with that. Also, flexibility for the future. We need some resource, some technologies that is only allowing in the cloud or available in the cloud, but it's better to have it, to use it in order to improve our development as a business. Also, we can have the best of the both work. Maybe for some reason I need some data on premise, or I have some processing specific. I needed the data on premise, but I can use other service or resources in the cloud. So there are several hybrid cloud user case. For example, digital transformation. An organization is need, or our organization today need to improve faster because the competency in the industry is relevant. So that opportunity to the digital transformation will help us if we have resource in the cloud because we can deploy it faster. For disaster recovery, we can set a lot of resource in the cloud as a disaster recovery in case we lost that our data, our data center on premise. We can have a cheaper way to have a disaster recovery. Usually, there are companies who have another data center active, so you have to buy servers that maybe you never will use. In hybrid clouds, in this hybrid cloud scenario, you can have a replica of your servers on premise and allow your user, sorry, a replica of your server in the cloud. So in that case, you will allow your user, in case you require a service or a system, you just active your resource in the cloud, and that moment you will have start paying for that resource. Also, for developing and testing, you need an infrastructure for some tests, some proof of concept to see if one system, resource, technology we can implement in our organization. Well, you just having you developing and test environment in the cloud, you can create it, test it, and then destroy it. For data processing, this is because the capacity to process data in the cloud is a lot better and cheaper than um processing from on-premise. Um, because of the storage is a high quantity of the data. Usually, when you have the data processing and the storage of those data in the cloud is cheaper. Overall, the storage part. Highly changeable workload, as I said before, you need Black Friday, Christmas, uh, some reason that you require more resource for a moment, you can have those additional resource in your cloud. And for exploration of cloud provider, you need to see what is the market, what is the tendency of the market, what are going to start uh, doing, implementing. So in this scenario, it is a good idea use these kind of technologies. So these are some hybrid cloud use case. There maybe you in your organization will have more cases. that is up to you. Some benefits of the hybrid cloud, well, flexibility and security. You can you can be sure that the resource in the cloud will be more secure that we can have it in our premise environment. All the cloud providers have a lot of resources dedicated to hardening and optimization of security of our resource in the cloud. Also, that will help us uh, implement something, delete it, acquire more resource. Also, it's cost effective. One thing that you have, if you already have your servers on premise, you should use it at least when until their supports expire. But in the cloud, you only pay for what you use. So if you don't use a specific resource, so you don't have any problem, you can use it. You won't pay for that. As I said before, the security, I never, uh, even if I am Microsoft MVP, I never seen a data center of Azure. I cannot be close of a data center. I don't know where are the data center, the Microsoft data center. So if even if I try to enter, I won't be allowed. So the physical security is outstanding. The security of the resource is other element that is beyond our normal configuration on premise. Yes, there are some vulnerabilities, some attacks to the cloud infrastructure, but usually, in most of the case, when you see data exposure of information in the cloud, usually it's because a misconfiguration of the environment. You can manage your risk because one part of the risk management is you can transfer the risk. In this case, you transfer a lot of your activities to the cloud service provider or your cloud provider. You can agility, uh, the in an agile way, you can implement resource technology, grow when you need it, download as you need it when you need it, and compliance. Most of the cloud service provider have compliance with ISO 2017, 2071, uh, uh, HIPAA compliance, GDPR, and others compliance. All those cloud service providers have it and compliance with those regulatory or requirements. So not everything is nice. There are some stuff that we can be attend or paying attention. There are some risks of the cloud environment, the hybrid cloud network issue. If you have an issue in your communication between your on-premise data center and the cloud, you will lose synchronization of the information, travel of the information. You will have latency that is inevitable. You will have delay on the communication between the cloud and on-premise. So you have to pay attention to internet. Even a good practice is have redundancy connection on premise in case we lose one internet provider, we can activate the second one. Other thing is infrastructure compatibility. Usually, there are resources that are not compatible with our cloud service provider. Not all service providers have the same compatibility of all resources. So you need to make some research before adopting or implementing one cloud service provider. Reliability, usually because you have uh, two different environments, usually you can lose the reliability of your data or information in the cloud. So you need to be aware and apply different control to avoid that loss of data reliability. Data handling, one of the things is there are some regulations that you cannot move the data outside the country, so you need to evaluate that part. When you move the data to the cloud, is handling by other resources. Um, in some cases, you can lose control of your data because in some cases of the clouds, even especially with software as a service, the replication, you don't control the replication of the data or the backup of the data. Can be really complex, the access management, if you didn't do it organically, the adoption of this hybrid environment. So it is important to know and practice good good process, have a good practice where you implement the access control. And even so, the role-based access control, while you are growing in your organization, you will start having uh, issues, complication. I had a lot of cases. I know people who has a lot of cases though of those complexity. They, it is possible to have a skill gap in the moment you adopt a hybrid infrastructure with with at least one provider. The people who usually is expert in on-premise environment won't be expert in cloud environment. Or my case, I know about cloud environment, Microsoft Azure environment uh, enough, but if you ask me administration of some resources on premise, maybe I don't have the skill, the necessary skill to administrate or manage those resources. So that is starting having a little bit complication, or even having two different teams to administrate each environment. And the private cloud and maintenance, as I said, usually when the data is replicating, the thing is starting getting complicated. So that is a point that we have to have at least we need to be aware. So those scenarios are really complex. Here came Azure Arc to the rescue. Azure Arc is a function, a resource from Microsoft Azure, and that resource manager allows us, one, administrate our infrastructure on premise, the infrastructure that we already have. We can administrate it with Azure Arc, so we can merge or administrate servers, database, Kubernetes cluster. So Azure allow us to onboard those infrastructure in our portal, in our Azure portal. Also, we can deploy Azure resource in our on-premise environment. We can deploy a Azure SQL database on-premise, Postgres, Azure Machine Learning Studio, App Service, Log Analytics, Function, API Management, a lot of service that are exclusively from Azure. When you connect with Azure Arc, you are allowed um, deploy those resources in the environment. In the I have a demo about it. I will show you later. Also, we can connect other clouds to our environment and our Microsoft Azure environment. We can add AWS and Google Cloud platform to our environment, so we can also deploy Azure resource in those cloud service providers. So at the end we have a multi-cloud infrastructure administrated from one portal, one provider, and this gives us a lot of advantage that I will show later. So the Azure Arc is connected to our on-premise environment. We can deploy resource in our on-premise environment. Even we can connect to Azure Arc. We can connect VMware servers and administrate all the servers that are inside the VMware. Also, we can connect and administrate different cloud service provider and deploy resources in those service providers. So as we say, we can administrate different resources. In the Azure portal, it look like this resource, and that also allows us deploy the different Microsoft resource. Microsoft Azure resource, we can deploy it in the environment. And we can have a unified operation, management, compliance, security, and governance. We can apply Azure policy to all the resource, even if they are on-premise or in other cloud. We can apply policies. We can apply tags in order to have a government or management of the resource. We can run playbooks. We can apply Microsoft Defender, so we can have endpoint protection, server protection, and different service protection with Azure Cloud. Have monitoring with Azure Monitor and log management with Log Analytics. So Azure Arc have different features and benefits as we saw. One is we can have a consistent inventory management, government, and security in our all environment. As explained before, we can have control of all the services that we have in different clouds, in different provider, in one dashboard. We can configure Azure VM extension. If you know a little bit about Azure servers, you can apply and configure extension in those resources. Those extensions have different functionality. I can do it in servers and resources that are on-premise and in other clouds. We can manage, control Kubernetes cluster. We can and through Kubernetes cluster is where we deploy app service, we deploy uh, SQL server, SQL manage identity, manage instance. Sorry, um, we can deploy a lot of Microsoft resource through that Kubernetes cluster. We don't need to administrate the Kubernetes that is administered by Azure Arc. As we are talking previously, we can apply a lot of integration, threat protection, monitoring, secret, chain tracking, extensibility, patch management, and update of the resource. We can do it through Azure Arc. This is a list of all the Microsoft resources that we can implement in our resources on-premise. Even we can apply role-based access control from Azure in those resources, even if they are on-premise or are in other clouds. And of course, we can administrate those resources through Azure Portal. Doesn't matter if it's in on-premise or is in other cloud. We can do it through Azure CLI, we can do it through PowerShell, or even Azure REST API. And this is kind of we can administrate Windows, Windows and Linux, VM, SQL, um, um, we can activate that Kubernetes, sorry, Azure enable of the on-premise service in the cloud. So we have one portal and we administrate the resource that I need natively from Azure and also resource from the other clouds like Google Cloud Platform or Azure Web Service. Even we can administrate at the VMware vSphere, administrate the service and the resource. And all resources, all these resources that are in our on-premise or other cloud environment, all of these resources will be seen in Azure as a regular resource of Azure, and we can administrate it as we are being talking. So enough talking. I'm going to show you a little bit about how is the the Azure Arc. Let me one moment. So we have our Azure portal, our regular Azure portal. We can go to Azure Arc if we looking in the search bar, and we will see our Azure Arc environment. I'm going to show you a little. We are going to navigate through the portal what we have, and also I will show you the process that I use to connect and Kubernetes from on-premise and a server from on-premise. So the one thing here, we have the list of all resources. Even we can have a map to overview the different resource, and if we have an error, this demo environment only have two resources, but you can imagine in an environment where you have 200 servers from on-premise and 200 servers from one cloud and 200 servers for other cloud. You need to see it in one view, those resources. So here is where you add a server. And for example, let's go through the process. There are different ways to add servers, even if are from AWS or other services. But let's, for example purpose, let's use the easy one. We choose our resource group, our subscription, nothing new. The region where are we going to deploy not deploy the resource, but the region where the Azure Arc resource will be registered. Can be Windows Server, Linux Server, and there are three connective methods. One is the public endpoint. What is in this case public endpoint is the resource have internet connection directly. So the resource can connect to the Azure environment directly, doesn't need anything else. You can do it, the connection. Other one is through private through proxy server. Usually, if you have a domain control server, those servers doesn't need access directly to internet or doesn't have directly access to internet. So in that scenario, we can configure a proxy server and we only have to set the URL of that proxy server. The other way is through private endpoint. This create a resource in Azure with a private IP, and if you have a VPN connection through Azure and your on-premise environment or any environment, you will be allowed to communicate through private IP, like the Azure Arc is a resource who exists in Azure, and it have a private IP from a range of resources that you already have in Azure. If you are going to do a lab, work with the public endpoint environment. We can there are some tags defined. We can fill the information or not as we require, and then we create an script. That script will that script will allow us add the server in the environment. For example, let me show you. This is the Windows server that I add to the environment. I just I just need or I just require run and script. You even don't need to know all this information of the script. That is created. You execute the script and the script run all the installation process. In one moment, we'll ask you for the credential of the administrator, and that's it. That is the only thing you need to add the server in the environment. Okay, didn't want to appear the script. In the case of the cluster Kubernetes, you can create a cluster or add a cluster. There are several requirements to compliance this, and in the case, let's in the documentation, this is the Microsoft documentation, where the requirements are you need a subscription, understand Kubernetes, have a Azure CLI installed in the server, install a specific extension, and you need to uh, have a up and running a Kubernetes cluster. So you need configure a Kubernetes cluster to in order to be able to connect it to Azure. My recommendation for testing process, you can use micro KAS in microkas.io. My recommendation is use this. It's pretty simple, the process of installation. If you have, even you can install it in Windows or Mac. Um, it's pretty easy the configuration, and you can have your Kubernetes service really fast. And also you need to require configure another providers, create a resource group, and create a connection. That is only the only thing that you require to do in the server. In the case of Linux, I can show you the command. As you can see, I execute the command. Of course, I already log in the environment with ACCLI. I log in my Azure environment and execute the script, and the resource is already added in the environment. After you run the script, you will see that existing resource in the environment. But the process to add it is pretty simple. Here is reminding us again the prerequisite. Um, we create add a name. Also, we have the same consideration to add it: public endpoint, private proxy server, or uh, private endpoint. Important, if you have a cluster of servers, you have to run that script principal server, in the principal server of the cluster, or in the cluster. And also is created a script, uh, even give you a guideline to connect and run the script. After you run the script, you will see the resource in Azure Arc. In the case of Linux, as I said, this is my script where I'm going to connect. I am reconnected, so maybe I will be receive an error. So this just is running validation, installing all the resources that require, and then we'll create our cluster and run it the the service. This will take a while. Meantime, we can keep reviewing the rest of the resources. We can also add Azure Stack, VMware vCenter. We can implement System Center virtual machine management. We can do it. Also, we can add and administrate SQL instance, manage instance. We can deploy manage instance. Uh, Also, this is an app service. If you know about app service, the app service is running. It's running in the environment of the in my on-premise environment. It's not running in Azure. It's connected to my on-premise environment and was deployed through the the current environment. We can deploy also API management, functions, log analytics, and if you have right now at this date, if you have Windows Server 2012 R2, you can create an extended security update. In the moment that what is extended security update? In the moment that an organization and version of Windows, uh, the version of Windows lose their support, we need change the operation system. But for some reason we cannot do it. We can activate this extended support and have 3 year more of support of the security updates. And even we can administrate SQL Server license in this environment. Uh, well, multiple configurations of the environment. And in the case of the server, one configuration, we can, if we configure the SSH for Windows, we can connect through SSH to a Windows server that there are on premise. Also, we can see the securities, uh, Windows sorry, the 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 Microsoft Defender for Cloud. If we implement the server, the version of the server, we will see our recommendation. In this case, this server, our on-premise server, have a security update pending to install. We can, if you remember, we talk about implement or execute Azure VM extension. I already implement Azure Monitor and Windows Patch extension, but we can just to apply those. We only need to choose the extension that we want to implement and then apply it. For example, let's apply OpenSSH for Windows. We only need select the extension that we want to install, and that's enough. That will be installed, will take a time. We can monitor here how is the deployment process. Let's go to our VM again. So we can apply, as we say, we can apply policies, Azure policies. For example, I configure the ISO uh, 2000, 2700 in the server. Of course, it's just a server, but I can make audit and monitor and take action our resource. That allows have a standard configuration all the servers in our environment. We can apply configurations for the machine. For example, I have some configuration that I need to apply to be in compliance. I can run commands in the server. If I had SQL server in that server, I can administrate it here. I can administrate the security updates. We talk about that, the extended security update, and we can manage all the updates of the server. I can control it. I can schedule the update. I can do all those tasks through the Azure Arc. Also, we have the Azure Update Manager. We can manage all the update of all resources from one Windows or one dashboard. And of course, we have inventory and change tracking. Now is through a policy like the change tracking inventory. Now we just need to apply a policy to execute it. And let's go back to the presentation. So we already saw how work these resources, and one some final thoughts. Explore in your environment. I already shared with you some options that you can deploy Kubernetes in your environment. Review the documentation. We have a lot of tutorials and step-by-step process that help us to implement Azure Arc. At the end, I am at your service. I have a link where I can help you with some mentor. If you are interested in Microsoft Azure technology, you want to become a Microsoft cloud architect, please use this link. You will receive a free mentoring of my part. Maybe the the portal is in Spanish, but I can do my best to have a session with you in English. Also, you can find me in social media and can connect with me in LinkedIn in those link. Thank you and see you next time.